Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Joey Dwyer here with a pretty special guest today. We're gonna get gritty today. We're gonna talk some offensive line with a guy who knows it just about better than anybody, former Vanderbilt offensive lineman Blake Fromang. And I think maybe his greatest accolade, what is it, three-time Door Report guest now one-time Vandy Sports guest. So thanks for coming on, man.
Yes, thanks for having me. Three-time TDR guest. Happy to be here today. Let's talk some ball.
Absolutely. I think I'm just going to give you the floor to start it out. You've got your notes. I think you might be the most prepared podcast guest that's ever come on the Vandy Sports Podcast. So just tell us what you thought of the offensive line on Saturday, what you think of their schemes, their personnel. Just run us through your thoughts, and then we'll follow up.
Sure. So when I was watching the game, I was actually traveling up to Chicago. So I was fighting trains, planes, and cars and everything, trying to watch the game. So service was spotty. I'll tell you, first review through it, I thought the offensive line looked great. But when you invited me on, I went back. I was like, I got to give Joey something special. So I was only able to watch the first half on YouTube. I wasn't able to find the second half, but I did write down some thoughts. And my thoughts are this: I think Tim Beck deserves Coach of the Week award for this offense. Um, we would not have beaten this Virginia Tech defense last year. I think Tim Beck is a rare coach who comes in and says, what talent do I have and what can I scheme them to do? Because the game plan was beautiful. It was perfect. We could not have beaten Virginia Tech with a immobile quarterback. We put Diego Pavia in the run game, so they had to worry about 11 players instead of 10. Because if a quarterback's just a pocket passer, just handing the ball off or throwing it, Diego's the run threat. Getting him involved was great. If you want to see how a play is supposed to be blocked, like to perfection, the first play of the game, unfortunately, we got a holding call, one of the wide receivers. But in terms of offensive line blocking, that first play of the game when Pavia went for like 19 or 20, that's clinic tape. That's what you want to see every single time. So second view through the game with a little bit more of a lens towards actually grading and looking at the offensive line, I think we did a good job. Chris Marv he's a good defensive play caller. I was watching the defenses they were running, and his blitzes, his linebackers, defensive backs, they did not show blitz. They were very disciplined because a lot of times you can see where the blitz is coming from. They stood flat-footed, and I thought they did a great job. So going down the line, Gunnar Hansen made some really good plays. I thought Castillo, he did solid. Needs to get up to the second level a little better than he did. Lasoya did well. Kevo Wesley and Hubbard, they both did well. And Chase Mitchell made some very good blocks too. On the whole, I think they did a good job altogether. Pass pro was great. I think Tim Beck, at least from the first half, there wasn't a lot of pass plays, but they kept him like three-step drops. So there wasn't a whole lot of pressure on the offensive line to maintain their blocks for a long time. I noticed that consistently. The play action looked good. Really, in terms of offensive line, it was a very good start against a very complicated defense. If they ran a meat and potatoes defense, without a lot of exotic looks, I'd be probably a little harder on the offensive line, but there was so many things getting thrown at them by Marv. I thought they handled it fine and it worked out for us. So I'll get into more details as we go, but on the whole, I thought it was good, and they handled a very top-rate, difficult defensive front to block all game.
For sure. I think the offensive line was maybe my biggest night and day difference from last year. Obviously, the quarterback play was what stood out, but I don't think they're in that game without what the offensive line did. It looked improved to me. Obviously, I think you'd have a better idea of that. Where are they the most improved from last year if you were to take a guess? Are they more physical? Is it how they're being schemed? Is it Stephen Lasoya's impact? Where are they better the most since last season?
They're definitely more physical. I know they weigh. I saw some, like, our average weight's 330. I think some of the second level blocking, which is when you get up to a linebacker, is good. I think that's good. The pass pro there's nothing to critique there. I thought the pass pro looked really good. The one sack that we took was a defensive end, interior lineman stump play. I mean, that's going to happen against Virginia Tech. You're going to give up one or two there. But I thought they did their job enough that we could win. And I think a lot of it, too, is not to take anything away from our offensive line, but Marv being as exotic as he was with these blitz packages. And what I mean, Beck had them figured out because Pavia's running. It's tough to account for a quarterback who can run and make reads. I really think Marv, being as exotic as he was, took and moved some of his guys out of position on some plays, and we just had the perfect play call on it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Obviously, it's exotic, and I think Virginia Tech is a lot of people kind of write it off because of how the game ended, but they have playmakers on the defensive line, probably more so than a lot of teams Vandy has on their schedule. How do you anticipate this holding up against some of the better teams on the schedule? Because I think we always look at it through the lens of, well, I don't know that this was good today, but I don't know that it can hold up against a Missouri or an Alabama or Texas. Obviously, it's kind of hard to project that, but are you seeing intangible signs or tangible signs at this point that lead you to believe it can maybe hold up in the SEC?
I think they can. Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing is where I like Beck so much is if you run our offense last year, your offensive line has to be perfect. You need a Georgia, you need a really, really solid offensive line up front. There's room for error with the offense we're running because there's reads on the play. It's not like you hand the ball off to Cedric Alexander, and if the blocking's not great, plays dead. Hold on, Pavia can read it and go out and run and get 10 yards. His escape valves on our offense are brilliant. I really mean it. That's what got me so excited because for the first time in a long time, just watching the play calling, it wasn't like, oh, we're moving the ball great. It's like, I completely understand why you're running this and this makes sense to me. Like, it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can hold up against other teams. We have enough moving parts and threats. Every play has got two different ways we can hit you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's brilliant. I really do. I mean it when I said if we had an immobile quarterback on Saturday, we are not winning that game.
Mm-hmm. For sure. How difficult is it to block for a guy like Pavia from your experience? Is it more difficult, or is his mobility something that makes your life a little bit easier if you're an offensive lineman?
It cuts both ways. So on read plays, you're blocking the main play, and if he reads it, he goes the other way, fine. But
Mm-hmm.
there were points in the game where I saw, linemen get up to the second level and they don't know where the ball is behind them, if it's going this way or this way. So it's like, all right, how do I angle myself? How do I block here? That's just the nature of the beast. It goes with it. But at the end of the day, you're just trying to stay on the field and move the ball. So it's a good thing. I mean, blocking for a mobile quarterback can get frustrating. You'll probably see more holding calls because you're not sure where the quarterback's running behind you or what's going on. It's like when Lamar Jackson just scrambles for 18 yards on a pass play and there's a holding call, it's because the offensive line doesn't know what's going on
Right.
behind them. You're just kind of playing it as the play develops, but it's good, man. I really am excited. I think, again, for the first time in a long time, not only is our offense solid, it makes sense. It really makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's kind of the impression I've got as well, is just they're using their personnel in a better way. Cedric Alexander talked on Tuesday about being put in a better position to succeed in terms of what he's getting from the offensive line. How have you seen him kind of utilized maybe differently than he was last year? I think we talked off the record about him being utilized more on the perimeter and teams maybe having to force him inside if they want to be able to stop them. It doesn't seem like Vanderbilt's gonna stop using the perimeter by any stretch, though.
Yeah, I don't think so either. One area of concern that we did talk about off the record was I noticed that our communication on the end of the line, I think it's mostly tight ends, and they did some great things. But if we got to call it out, we got to call it out. Our tight ends and tackles have got to do a better job of communicating the blitz is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Virginia Tech was very disciplined. They didn't show it all the time, so I'm not getting after them too bad. Like there was a corner blitz on a play where the corner was flat-footed and didn't show he was blitzing, and then he came in. And Joe, you may know this, so if you do it, just ignore me for this couple minutes, but I want to explain to everyone why it matters, if that's all right.
But yeah, go ahead. We're here for
So,
offensive line coach speak as much as we can get.
all right. So if you're going against, let's say you got a 4-man front in front of you. Each one of those defensive linemen is responsible for a gap in front of them. If there's no blitz, there's nothing going on, no stunts, they go forward and they're supposed to maintain a certain gap. So you know where they're going. I mean, as an offensive lineman, they're going straight ahead without any other indicators for the most part. When someone comes off the line on the end, like someone comes up to blitz on the end, a linebacker, someone else, they're going, it shifts where all the other defensive linemen are going off because you can't have two people going into one gap. So, for example, if I'm left tackle and there's a 4 down front and there's someone comes up and walks up on the edge and is going to blitz, that tells me as an offensive tackle, the actual down person in front of me is going to go inside. And the rest of the defensive line is going to slant inside. And it's important to communicate that down the line because, you know, if everyone's anticipating, oh, he's just going to go straight, it completely throws off your steps. And when I was playing there, you know, with Coach Hand and Coach Leitner and them, we had specific, you know, calls we'd make saying like someone's out here blitz, you know, whatever it was at the time, just to tell the rest of the line, get your mind right. They're probably going to slant inside, take more of a cautious step or anticipate it. I didn't see a lot, unless, you know, I completely missed it. I didn't see that being communicated as effectively as I'd like by mostly the tight end position there. There were some plays where they would, you know, bring someone and the D line would cut inside, and then I'd see some of our guys just take too big of a step without understanding that that was what was going to happen, and they missed some blocks. We got lucky on some for sure, but we going into week 2, I would like to see better communication between our tackles and tight ends. And another small note that I noticed is it looks like Coach Klenakis has our entire offensive line, including the tackles, get down into 3-point stance pretty much all game. When I was there, we'd be allowed to go 2 or 3 point, depending on the play. We kind of had autonomy on it. Putting your hand in the ground, while it does help with leverage, and it's definitely a more effective way to go about run blocking. When you're sitting up in a 2-point stance, your field of vision's a lot better. So when they're down in a 3-point stance, it's a little harder to move your head around because you got your hand in the ground. So I don't know. That's one thing I would like to see improve. I'd like to see our second level blocking be a little bit better. You know, we have our offensive line did a good job at the first level for the most part, but when you're having a guard tackle combo or center guard combo, they need to be able to get off on the linebackers a little bit better than what I saw. Again, because it's an option and Diego Pavia can just pull it and run the opposite way. That's a pain. If you're asking me what's hard about Diego running is you don't know which way the ball is ultimately going to end up going. So you trying to get off on a backer, the play could be going the complete opposite way. But in terms of improvement areas, the communication and the second level blocking could be better. Everything else looked good for the most part. I mean, I was very impressed with it. That jet sweep we dropped was a touchdown. I mean, it was one-on-one. Junior Sherrill had a one-on-one with the safety there. I got him winning that 10 out of 10 times, but we look good. I'm not going to hate on us more than that. We got to clean up some small things.
For sure. Is the 3-point stance thing on the outside, that's untraditional, I assume?
It's not. In today's game, you don't see a lot of offensive linemen going 3-point stance. I mean, on a tackle, you know, if it's obviously a run play, if it's 3rd and short or 4th and short, you'll see it. But on the run of the mill 1st and 2nd down, especially in the pros, like tackles don't generally get in a 3-point stance. They just don't do it.
Right.
It's harder to pass block out of a 3-point stance because when you're in a 2-point stance, your weight's about right. All you got to do is kick step. If you got your hand in the ground, that's just another moving body part you got to try to get, and it could set you up for failure. So it's I wouldn't say it's traditional anymore. I don't see it as much.
For sure. He seems very old school, and I almost think that's what the doctor ordered for them, is like a hard-nosed, traditional, old school type of guy in that role.
Oh, they're hard-nosed. Like they're a good offensive line, and I think they're complemented by the scheme. They really, really are. Like last year, if one guy messed up, plays dead. This year, you know, things happen. Marv ran a heck of a defense against us. We missed some blocks. We did. but the play's not dead because you got Pavia with an escape out. Like I cannot credit Beck enough of how creative and how perfect this offensive scheme is for our team. I'm like, it's exciting to watch, at least from my perspective, because you're never dead if someone messes up front. You really aren't, and it showed a lot actually on Saturday. So I'm happy with it. I really am.
For sure. I think another thing that they do that is different, and maybe gives them more margin for error, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, is the strong and the quick tackle, where they're kind of almost playing it like field and boundary corner. That's what Harkley compared it to yesterday. Is that something you've liked? Is that something that you thought made an impact on the game, or is that something that makes their lives more difficult and maybe unnecessarily?
The whole concept of it is foreign to me, to be honest with you. When I was there and Coach Han was coaching us, you stayed where you stayed. There were no substitutions throughout the game. Like over the last couple of years, we've subbed in a lot of offensive linemen. When I was there, it was for the most part, Coach Han, it was the starters are the starters. If someone gets hurt, someone else goes in. But he wrote his starters the whole time, and he kept them in the exact same spot. I need to see more film on this before I can decide the efficacy of it, if it's worth doing it. I don't personally, as I sit here today, and I could be moved from my position here, I don't see the pros in doing it versus the cons. I don't want my offensive linemen having to think about which foot they're stepping with, switching the playbook. Like they got to move sides and then understand what the right side's doing and then go back to the left side and do like I'm sure it's more nuanced and better trained than what I'm putting it. I just am of the mindset when you got to call out blitzes and you got everything else going on the offensive line up front, because it's a game without inside the game up there. I don't want my guys having to think as much as they're thinking with having to switch sides and move sides and all that. I'd rather have them play one position and get really good at it. But Joey, proof's in the pudding. They beat Virginia Tech. I could be very wrong.
Mm-hmm. If that goes well,
sorry. So it's
ahead.
only weird if it doesn't work, Joey.
Right.
It's only weird if it doesn't work.
Right. And we've always talked about how they have to be different to succeed. And I wonder if that's the type of change that, if it works, almost makes them harder to defend in a sense. And I don't know if there's any validity to that, but is that something that could make them maybe different enough from what they normally see or teams normally see to maybe make them a little more complex to defend?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, defenses are always looking to key in on things. It gets as hyper focused Joey is. His foot's a little farther back than usual by an inch or two. It's a pass play. Like they look for tells on game film more than you could ever imagine. So it does throw another wrinkle in. It's like, oh, what are they doing with this? We got to think about this. What plays do they run out of this? And then you can run, if they're hyper focused on the plays they think you're running out of it, they could switch up on you and just go other plays that you're not anticipating. It's definitely a chess move you can play. Mm-hmm. It is. I don't like making my guys have to call out the fronts, call out who they're blocking, and then switch sides every couple plays. And then they got to get their footwork right too, which, I think I said this on the PDR podcast. It's not as easy as everyone thinks. It really isn't. And credit to the guys for being able to do that. Doing a kick step as a tackle is not the same both sides. Like you really have to train it. You'd think it'd be something you can just, flip the foot and you're fine. You've got to work the heck out of it. So I don't like putting people in those spots. I'd rather have them do the one move they practice 10,000 times instead of one they practice 5,000 and the other 5,000. But I know I'm rambling because these thoughts are just occurring to me. But also, it makes our guys, more of a pro prospect, because then I guess they can switch sides and say they played both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder if that's something that went into the thinking with that.
I don't know. I really don't. I can turn into a fan of it, Joey. I'm just, I gotta see more. I don't think it moved the needle. I watched the flow of the game and the snaps. I don't think it moved the needle much for me. but there might be nuances to it in the game inside the game that I'm just not seeing. And maybe Klinakis knows it way better than me. And he's like, well, that's why this worked, or that's why that worked. I don't know.
For sure. I want to go back to the pro prospect thing. I think they've got some guys who have a better chance than maybe people give them credit for. Who do you envision as kind of their best pro guys? I would guess Gunnar Hansen's probably at the top of the list, but is there anybody else that you think maybe has a shot?
Gunnar Hansen, definitely. He's our best guy, hands down.
Mhm.
Um, I think Lasoya did a good job. Um, and I liked Mitchell did some really nice things. Mitchell's got some things to clean up. But I definitely saw what our staff saw when they were recruiting him.
Mhm.
There was an inside zone play he was on the back of where that's honestly, if you have a three technique, which means he's almost head up on the guard, and you got to get in front of him and block him on the backside of an inside zone. That's, at least in my opinion, that's the hardest, if not one of the hardest blocks you can do as a tackle. I watched him do that with patience and incredible footwork. Like, his execution on that shows me he could play next level for sure.
Mhm.
He's just, the whole line's just got to clean up the communication. I think a lot of the issues, Joey, weren't so much bad technique as it was they need to talk more and identify blitzes better than they did. So they're not caught like stepping too far when someone hits the gap or something like that. Once they get that cleaned up, they'll be fine.
For sure. And I wonder if that's something that comes with time too, because I think we talked a lot about in the preseason continuity on the offensive line. And that's something we haven't brought up yet. They've got what, three transfers there. And I mean, this is a line that hasn't played much together, if at all. So I was interested to see kind of how it would come together in terms of what they had and how they were communicating. I guess it's maybe not fully there, but I was pleasantly surprised to see the way they were able to be effective despite being almost completely new to each other.
Yeah, I was too. I was thinking about it too because I'm being as candid with you as I can. Marv brought the heat.
Mhm.
He really brought the heat, and I was like, does he think we're not good enough up front where he can get away with doing that and bringing so many guys and getting them out of position, doing so many different things? There's that school of thought, or is there two? He respects us enough. He knows he needs to bring exotic things to try to stop us. I don't know which school of thought he fell into,
Mhm.
but it was not. It was not an easy game in terms of IDing linebackers and who to block that game. They ran base front maybe 3 or 4 times the whole first half without anything crazy going on.
Mhm.
I'm Joey. I'm very impressed with their ability to just handle it. I mean, later on in the first half, the offensive line started being a little more patient and tentative in their steps because people were just bodies were flying from everywhere, and that really worked out well for them. So, as much as communication would help in that game, and the reason I'm not getting after the offensive line as bad is because Marv has those linebackers and the corners and the blitzing people. They were so disciplined, you couldn't tell pre-snap if they were coming or not.
For
You
sure.
couldn't. You couldn't. And that's what we used to key on as offensive tackles is if someone's we call it flat-footed, meaning they're probably dropping into coverage. They got their feet square with their shoulders or not in like a sprinter stance. If they're in a sprinter stance, it's like, oh, they're coming, call them out, let everyone know.
Mhm.
Marv's people were flat-footed in normal position, so you could not tell, in the pre-snap that this is a blitz. So I thought, with as good as Marv was, the offensive line dealt with it well.
For sure. Obviously, you're a guy who predicted the win against Virginia Tech. I'm going to ask you some bigger picture stuff in a second, but before I do, I want to go through your notes one more time and let us know if we missed anything.
Um, Let me see. Jet sweep was touchdown. Let's see.
I have
Oh, linebacker, or I'm sorry, running backs. Running backs, shout out them. They took it in the face on some pass protections.
Mhm.
On they deserve an award for that. Unbelievably good job by the running backs. One of them took it in the face off a defensive end tackle twist game. Oh, I think it was Cedric Alexander. He stood in there and just took it. So shout out him. Shout out the whole group. They did a great job. I also wrote a note on that second touchdown we scored. I wrote when our line gets up to the second level, magic happens. Great run. Like if we can get our people up on the linebackers, and Marv again was throwing exotic stuff at us. We execute our game plan. It's gorgeous. It really is. Like watch that first play. If you want to see how it needs to look every snap, that first play of the game was beautiful. So those are my notes.
For sure. Last thing, as an alum of the program, obviously you're around it more than most, or at least are more observant than most. Just tell me what you think generally of the job Clark Lee has done and just the direction of the program. You know the challenges with it, and you know kind of what the expectation should be for it as well. Just what have you made of the job he's done recently, and just how big this win was for him?
I want to shout out Candace for giving him the opportunity to pivot. I think Clark, a lot of coaches, it's very ego driven. You think your plan should work and you think, you've had success in the past, you think it should work and you think what you're doing is right. It's not you, it's everyone else. Clark took ultimate accountability on that. He made the changes in the offseason he needed to, and Candace let him do it. I mean, what AD is letting someone turn heel, especially in the SEC, in this many years in and say, all right, just throw it all out and see what you can get done. I think that took tremendous courage from her to do that, especially coming off a very difficult, baseball didn't end well. Basketball is a dumpster fire this year. Her letting him do that, getting the funds for him and saying, let's do it, I believe in you, was huge. In terms of the hires, I really love the Steiner hire. I really love the Steiner. It's an unsung hero position. The strength staff spends more time with the players than anyone else does. They do. When I was there, we had Dwight Galt when I first got there, who, from all accounts, from what I hear about Steiner, they're one and the same. Run you to death, lift heavy, grit, try to break you. Like, Joey, you don't understand. After my first workout at Vandy, I was like, I don't know if I can do this for 4 to 5 years. They love you, but they will kill you. Like every day they're trying to break you. So when you get to game day, you're ready to go. And that was our mentality. The workouts were so hard and sucked so bad. Even every player on the team was at least thinking, you might as well win here. I mean, we've been through so much, you might as well win. And you get close with everyone. So I love the strength hire. I think that was huge. I thought that was so important. And he knocked it out of the park. He did. Because that sets the tone for the team in the offseason. It sets, getting everyone accountable, getting everyone pulling the rope in the same direction. When things get hard, when you're running those sprints at the end of a workout, is everyone going to rally around and be tough, or are people going to break apart and people are going to quit? That's huge. Clark taking over the defense. I did call some good stuff this game on Twitter. I say Clark's going to have to win this game. It's coming down to him as a D coordinator, which he did. And he did great. I mean, bad stuff's going to happen all the time. Virginia Tech's a good team. They were going to come back. It was never going to be a pretty win. I think that was a good call, him taking over the D coordinator. And it lets him get his hands back into it. I think he's a coach. He can't be as removed as a normal head coach is and let everyone else just do their – he needs to be in there doing his job. I think that brings the best out of him. And we saw it. His defense, other than some blown coverages, was brilliant. And it doesn't hurt to have Brandon Fontenette and all those guys there too.
No,
it was brilliant.
Certainly.
Sorry, Joey.
No, go ahead. I
thought it was a well-called defensive game. He took some risks that didn't pay off. It happens. You're playing Virginia Tech. They're going to make you pay. It's going to happen. Offense, I'll sing their praises till I'm blue in the face. Jerry Kill and Beck, absolute masterpiece of understanding what you have and implementing a system based on what you have. I was thinking about it, Joey. It's, the offense we ran last year, you had to be perfect on it. You really did. In this offense we have now, it's like a boxer with really good defense. You can't keep your head in the line. If you don't get if you keep your head on that line, you're going to get smacked. You're going to get knocked out. It's like George Foreman. Unless you're throwing a George Foreman haymaker, you're getting smacked. This year, we're moving, we're bobbing, we're weaving a little bit. We got options, we got gadget plays, we got outs if the first look doesn't work. Like we're way more dimensional this year, and it plays to the strengths that we have. Like you don't need to have as good of an offensive line this year with this offense if you have a Diego Pavia. Like they changed the variables of what's needed to be effective on offense from last year to this year. This year, you need a good offensive line. They don't have to be great. They're good. And you need an insanely good quarterback. This is so much more on the quarterback this year than last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like last year, you need, top wide receivers. You need the best offensive line. You need all this stuff. This year, all you need is a good offensive line, a mobile quarterback, a good running back, and some tight ends that can block. And you hope the wide receivers are good, but an average wide receiver core with this offense will be fine.
For sure. I think just seeing how it was able to operate was almost jarring to me in a sense, just because of how it looked in the fall. But I also think they held a lot back. I think that was an impressive game in a lot of senses, Blake, and that offensive line. I'm glad we brought you on because I think it needed to be addressed.
Yeah, the offensive line they did good against a very like when I mean thrown in the fire in terms of looks they had some crazy blitzes and twist games brought at him. Marv schemed this one up and threw his fastball like he did, and it worked out well. So I'm proud of the offensive line. Hopefully they can get through these next two games without getting injured, or they're fine. I hope that. I hope they can tighten some things up too. The reps are only going to help. And I think they'll be fine. Really, I was impressed with them. We keep the offense we're running, a good offensive showing, even a decent one from the O-line. If we got Pavia back there, we got a chance no matter what.
For sure. I think you almost quoted Clark Lee there. And Blake, I think you had a more optimistic prediction than just about all of us. You were about what, 3 points away from being required to come to Nashville for the Alcorn State game, but just narrowly avoided it. So I guess we'll see you around soon, but not this week.
Not this week. Not this week. I was hoping they would hit. I'll tell you, Joey, at halftime I was stressed because I was like, I don't know logistically how I'm going to make this work. But look at God, we still won, and I don't have to put my wife through it to get up to Nashville. But I'll be up for a game. All right.
All right. I think you got the best of both worlds there.
I do. All right, Joey. Thanks for having me, brother.
Yep. Thanks, Blake. Appreciate it.
Yeah.